This video is going to be a visual representation of learning to live with your grief. Learning to live with your grief is how I like to put it, rather than the usual expressions of moving on or getting on with it, because I think actually we don't necessarily move on in just the same way or get over it. We learn to live with it. We learn to live with the emotional pain, the same as you might have to learn to live with a bit of physical pain that the medical profession can't quite cure, and your brain blocks a little bit of it out. And in the same way, we learn to live our lives without the person we've lost, still keeping that love and everything there and all those wonderful memories. So, when I lost my youngest daughter, I was completely overcome with grief. I was crushed, diminished. I didn't know who I was or what I was anymore. And this little jam jar, I think, is quite a good representation because it is all squashed down and so on. And this stone represents my grief. Now, if I put that inside of me there, you'll see that there isn't really any room for much personality around. There isn't much room for anything other than the grief, which was consuming me so badly. But gradually, bit by bit, I managed to learn to go out and enjoy myself without feeling guilty, get back to work, whatever things that it is in your life that you need to do that you can't at the moment. And so eventually I found myself as this jam jar, and if I put my grief in there, my grief has stayed the same. It hasn't got smaller or anything like that, but you can see that there's some room around it for my personality, for my life, for all the things that I want to do, and allowing other people back into my life. So, but I did have a bit of professional help to get here as well. But there are times, or there were times then, where things would trigger my grief and I would go back into this little jam jar and be consumed by grief. But I knew I'd got into this other jam jar, and I knew, who I was again, and therefore I knew I could get back there. And so I would manage to get back into this jam jar. Still, from every now and then, you get the triggers, anniversaries, things like that, and also the things you're not expecting. Go back into this little jar, but because I've been back in and out of there, I know that I can get back there quicker and easier. But now, as time has gone on, and I've learnt so much from the people that I've met during doing bereavement support and just living my life, that now I like to think that I am this jam jar. Now, if I put my stone into this jam jar, you can see that there's an awful lot of room here. There's a lot of room for the person who I am now, for all my family, all my friends, all my experiences, all that I've learnt, all that I've tried to read about grief and things like that, all the experiences that I had. But still, from time to time, I have my bad days, the same as anybody else. I feel particularly sorry for myself and sad, miserable, depressed. I go back into this jar. I don't go back into this one. This is the overwhelming grief in the beginning. But I do go back to this one sometimes, and I do allow myself to do that as well. Because I think, you don't want to keep pushing all the grief back into a little box and never letting it out. So I might feel a bit sorry for myself for a day or so, but I know I can get back again, into this nice big jar. And if I go back there again, I know that I can get there. And just the same as with the little one, it gets easier and easier to get into this jar again. So I hope that you will be able to find your own jam jars to represent your learning to live without the person you've lost, your own representation of grief, because this is actually a stone that was my father's, and it's quite nice that I keep a little bit of my father with me as well, because he died a couple of years after Rosie. And I hope this will help you, and I hope that you will have your days when you can jump into your bigger jars and get away from this overwhelming sense of grief. Thank you very much.